everyone. Welcome back to the railroad, the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision in HO scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for a special sound decoder review or sound decoder decision making, or picking out the right sound decoders for standardization on your layout. After working on this layout and working with sound for the first time in my modeling career on this HO scale layout the last 3.5 years, been working mainly with ESU and SoundTraxx decoders, and been trying to figure out what to do about the differences between the two and how to decide which ones to use and how to standardize, or whether or not to standardize. So that's what this whole video is about, and I hope you appreciate it. Here's my take on the subject.
In my 4 years of experience with sound decoders and attempting to use sound realistically on a layout, I have concluded that sound decoder standardization is crucial to using sound effectively. But which one? There are many types of sound decoders out there. When I began my modern era mountain Union Pacific HO layout, I went about purchasing appropriate locomotives as they became available. Since I was determined to have a completely sound-equipped local roster, all of them came DCC and sound equipped. This meant that every bit of my roster had either SoundTraxx or ESU LokSound decoders. To my surprise, I quickly found out that these two types of decoders were not very compatible when they were consisted together in a train. Speed matching locos with different decoders was not difficult using the JMRI speed profiler. Pretty much everything else was difficult. The use of function keys and the way they were used for both sound and lights were very different from each other. Also, the quality of the sound and the way they were incorporated into the decoders had very different approaches. Here are 6 differences between the decoders and how they impacted my decision on which decoder to use as the standard. First of all, F8. It mutes the sound on SoundTraxx decoders, while F8 starts up the sound on ESU LokSound. This is both surprising and disappointing. While there is a workaround for this, it is nowhere near perfect. Second, on SoundTraxx decoders, function mapping is very straightforward and easy to understand, but it is also less powerful and less flexible. On ES LokSound decoders, function mapping is a bit confusing and harder to learn, but it is more flexible and more powerful. I think most people are split on which decoders they like best, based mostly on how they feel about this difference. Here's the example.
All right, here's the decoder programming difference between the TSU and the ESU LokSound. Here's an example of one of my locomotives. By the way, this is Decoder Pro. I highly recommend it if you haven't used it yet. Definitely is the way to go on programming. So this is a TSU Tsunami 2. This is how you program the functions. So you have all the functions or all the different lighting effects first here, and you can assign all the different F functions to each different lighting. So you have a headlight, backup light, and then what they call FX3 through FX8. So you can hook up lights to all of them. Now you can do these checks here, and that means it's on whether it's pressed F4 or not, as long as it fits the different situations, forward driving, reverse driving, and so on. So you basically just assign a function unit to every different type of light, and then here you have all the different sounds. So you can assign a function to each of the signs, or you can disable it. And it's always, here you have the RPM plus and minus. That's an action, not a sound or a light. But the way it's set up is that if you have it assigned to a light or to a sound, if you press the button, the sound or light is on. If you press the button off or take off the button, then the light or sound is off. So it's pretty easy to understand and pretty straightforward and easy to get things situated. Now, if you want something a little bit more complex, then you have to take a look at the LokSound from ESU. So here's the same Decoder Pro programming, but this is how the functions are mapped. And you don't have just one function for each thing, but you can have multiple functions, and whether they're on or off or forward or reverse. And then you can do physical outputs, which are headlights, different kinds of lights. Then you can have logical functions like dimming the lights, or these what they call shift mode, where you can transition from one sound to another, do all kinds of different things, and then you can assign different sounds. So this is a lot more complicated, but it is a situation where you can, once you figure it out, and I still am learning, but once you figure it out, you can do things that you can't do with the SoundTraxx TSU. For example, here you can go on or off. So this can be active if it's not pressed. On the SoundTraxx, it's either active when it's pressed, not active when it's not pressed. You can have the other way around, where it's active when it's not pressed and not active when it is pressed. And then here you have all the different choices for the lightings, up to 18. So headlight, rear light, and then all the other lights. And then here's all the different actions, the logical functions you can do. They have something called drive hold, where you can hold the speed and then increase the RPMs. And then they have all these shift modes, and I don't understand them quite completely. I know shift 1 is used for dynamic brake and the transition from the prime mover being idled and then the dynamic brake sound coming on. That's kind of a whole sequence of sounds and transitions. You have a primary load and optional load, a lot of different logical functions that can take place when the conditions of the from the very left-hand column is met. And then, of course, you have all the different sound slots, and you can actually you can do your own sound slots. You could record your voice if you wanted to and have your voice play out over your locomotive, but there are like 186. Now here's how I've done the lights. The F0 turns on the headlights, but I also have it turning on the ditch lights, which is auxiliary 1 and auxiliary 2. But the ditch lights only come on when F7 is not pressed, which is dimming. So when the dimming is pressed, the ditch lights go off. And when the F7 goes off, notice it says not F7, then the ditch lights come on. And this is the effect I was looking for this. So I press F0 and everything comes on with one press. The number boards, the headlights, the ditch lights. But then when I press F7, the headlight will dim and then the ditch lights go off. So you can control that with one key. Now back to the reasons.
Third, SoundTraxx sound decoders are available in different sound profiles of like sounds: steam, EMD, GE, electric, etc. There is a sound selection reference on their website that lists which profile to use for the specific model in which the decoder is installed. ESU LokSound, on the other hand, sells their sound decoders blank, and then the user can have a specific prototype locomotive sound profile loaded onto the decoder. There are 186 different North American sound profiles on their website that can be downloaded for this purpose. You can use their Lok programmer for this or have your vendor load a specific profile for you before they ship it to you. Fourth, dynamic braking is F4 on or off on ESU LokSound. SoundTraxx, on the other hand, cycles through low dynamic brakes, high dynamic brakes, back to low, and then off each time you press F4. This obviously causes issue when different decoders are in a consist. The best thing you can do is press F4 once to turn on dynamic brakes, and then press F4 3 times to turn dynamic brakes off. Fifth, ESU LokSound decoders can have their firmware updated via the Lok programmer. The SoundTraxx decoders cannot. This is an obvious advantage for ESU LokSound. I have already had one issue I had with the LokSound decoders resolved via a firmware update. And lastly, there is a difference in the sound quality of the decoders and how closely the sound files match the sounds of the prototype. You can have two GE AC4400 locomotives, one with SoundTraxx decoder and the other with ESU LokSound decoder, and they will not sound the same, and will change sounds differently with speed or load changes. Now, which one is better is completely subjective.
All right, here's the difference between Tsunami 2 on the right by SoundTraxx and the ESU on the left. These are both AC4400s. That is the SoundTraxx starting up. I'm going to mute that. Now I'm starting up the ESU LokSound. Now these are two AC4400s, so they should sound the same, but they have different decoders in them. Not quite the same. You can be the judge on which one you think sounds better. And here we're going to now crank it up to 30 scale miles per hour and see how it sounds when it increases in speed. Now, I should note that some of the sound you're hearing is the wheel spinning. So that's that low rubbing sound. You won't hear that normally when it's pulling a train. And now we're going to stop it. And you can hear it revving back down again. Again, this is the SoundTraxx TSU Tsunami 2 on the right. It's still winding down, even though I'm touching the one on the left. I'm waiting for it to wind down all the way. All right. Now we're back to the left-hand side of the ESU. It's the idle right now. And we're going to crank it up to 30 scale miles per hour. Again, this is a completely subjective between the two. And I have to say, it sounds like the volume is a little bit higher on the ESU than it is on the SoundTraxx. So don't let that be a part of your decision. There it's winding down. There's a difference in the bells. Now, one thing about the bell is you want to make sure that it stops in between rings. and not in the middle of the ring, which both of them do real well. There's the horn. I'll turn that off. There's the bell. Again, this is completely subjective as far as which you think sounds better, sounds more realistic. And when they do run together in a consist, when you hear both of them, it's not really distracting or anything where you think, okay, that sounds weird. It just seems like it would be better to have it be more consistent where you have the horn. So differences in the sound, and also differences in how the sounds transition as you increase the speed.
The deciding factors for me to choose ESU are the firmware updates, the enhanced function mapping, and the sound files being more specific to each locomotive and sounding more realistic to me. Of course, your opinion and choice on these may differ from mine. So, I am switching over my SoundTraxx decoders to ESU LokSound. This will be a gradual process that may take over a year to complete. During the process, I will be selling my SoundTraxx decoders on my Square website.
All right, so what does that mean going forward? It means changing all the Tsunami SoundTraxx decoders over to ESU, but it also affects when I buy new locomotives. So when I buy new locomotives, if they are available with ESU installed, I will get the ESU and have it come with the ESU. But if it does not come with ESU, and here's one example, the BLI ES44, I order them as stealth units, and then I add a LokSound decoder, which you see I'm kind of unpackaging here. This is a 21 pin decoder, the ESU LokSound version 5, which is the most recent one. So it's not very big, and the 21 pin is the most recent, the most up-to-date one. And here is the insides of the BLI ES44. You can see it does have some wires attached from the chassis to the shell body. And then they have now this is a stealth model. You can get them with their Paragon 4, but I ordered this as a stealth. And then I'm going to install an ESU decoder in place of the non-DCC plug here. So that's a little plug that's used so you can just run it on regular DC. And then here you can see the difference between the two and see the 21 pins. Now looking at this, you would think it would go the other direction, but it doesn't. Now this is a little bit bigger, so I have to take both pieces of tape off. Notice I'm using the back of the knife because I don't want to cut anything. Sometimes this tape is hard to get off. In the N scale, they always use Capron tape, which was very thin because they didn't want it to take any space. In HO scale, they use electrical tape or whatever. It's got a lot of Scotch tape. Everything's easier in HO scale. I think I spent most of the time getting the tape off of here. All right, so the decoder goes right under the wires and onto the pins. Gonna lift the wires up carefully, slip it underneath, and just press it right down. And it's in. And this BLI ES44 it comes with speakers, which is really nice. Then once I get it all put back together, the first thing I do is put it on the programming track and program it. I'm going to do more on programming on another video when I go over the LokSound, over the Lok programmer that I also am beginning to use. Here's the Athearn AC4400. It doesn't have any wires between the two. There's just these little pins that go back and forth, which is kind of nice. So they also have, again, now normally I would buy the Athearn with the decoders, but now since I'm switching over to ESU, I do not buy Athearns with the DCC and sound installed. I buy it DCC ready, and then I take out the pin, the plug there. Here's the instructions, by the way, that they give you. I always throw these away, not because I don't read instructions. It's just that it's easier for me to just open it up on the computer. So you can access these instructions as a download, as a PDF file. And to me, it's a lot easier just to refer to the instructions on the computer or even on my phone, rather than try to keep the instructions. Alright, so here's another 21 pin. Now this is definitely easier than swapping out existing SoundTraxx decoders for the ESU. So it's just a matter of taking out the plug, putting in the 21 pin. Notice I got a wire there between the pins, it looks like. So we'll take that out of there. One of the pins is blank, or one of the spaces. There's 21 pins, so one spot is blank, and then you so you can't put it in backwards, or can't put it in upside down. This one uses Scotch tape, it looks like. Now this is the Athearn AC4400. This does not come with a speaker built in. That's kind of the nice thing about BLI, that Athearn doesn't always do. I did buy a Athearn, not an Athearn Genesis, but just a straight Athearn C44 -9, and it actually did come with a speaker. The Stealth model came with a speaker. But this one, the Genesis one, did not come with a speaker. It's got a little weight there in place of the speaker. And I purchased a speaker from Scale Sound Systems. They make some really, really nice speakers. So, and they're made, you can get them exactly to fit the spot for an Athearn. And so it's just a matter of swapping them out and then very carefully putting the screws back in. This was the hardest part. My hands are too big for these tiny screws. I tried it a few times with my fingers, decided that's not going to work. So I got the tweezers going. Use my screwdriver to put it in. All right, then it was a matter of connecting wires from the speaker to the motherboard, and there were two little metal prongs there for the speaker. You had speaker plus and speaker minus. They use red. Generally speaking, there's red for plus and black is for the negative. So the way this works, you have these little clips, these black clips. You put the wire through the hole, and then you carefully put the clip over the wire and the clip, and it holds on there very nicely. And we get the black one and do the same thing. Now when I solder onto the speaker or onto the motherboard, I usually put a little flux on it and then just touch it very quickly with a little bit of solder so we get some solder on each of the tabs. There's two tabs there. One has a red mark on it, so I assume that's positive. The one that does not have the red mark is the negative. So I get a little bit of solder on each of the tabs. And I put a little flux on the wires. And put just a little bit of solder on each of the wires. I want to make it so that when I actually solder them together, I can just touch it very briefly, and then the solder will kind of fuse together. So I touch it there together, and then just touch it with the iron, get them both melted. Well, hopefully I hold things together. Usually tug on it a little bit, make sure it's on there good. And we'll do the black. And we're all set. Ready to get things put back together, and of course put it on the programming track. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and hopefully learned something, got some information about sound decoders and something useful as you make decisions for your own layout. We'll have some more sound decoder videos coming up. Going to do a couple of videos. Well, first of all, we're going to do one video on the Lok Programmer. Going to do a review of that, the Lok Programmer, and along with the software that goes with it, and then also the decoder tester by ESU. It's going to do a review of that, and then also do a couple more videos on swapping out decoders. So something to look forward to. I have still been working on the bridge here in this new area. Stay tuned for an update on that. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Have a great weekend and a very happy holidays. Take care.